The sun had barely kissed the horizon when the billionaire sheikh strode through the marble halls of his sprawling palace, his every step echoing power and purpose. A sudden ripple of chaos shattered his carefully controlled world. Whispered warnings of a catastrophe worth $300 million that threatened to unravel far beyond mere numbers. His steel-gray eyes, sharp as falcons, locked onto the source, fueled by an unexpected flicker of concern that no treasure could buy. The emirate lay draped in gold and amber hues, where endless deserts stretched like molten silk beneath a burning sky. Inside the palace, walls encrusted with jewels flickered under crystal chandeliers, perfuming the air with the intoxicating scent of frankincense. Yet, beyond these opulent orders, the weight of disparity hovered, a fragile veil between worlds. The sheikh, a titan among men, radiated cold dominion. His tailored robes whispered secrets of ancient lineage and unyielding control. Meanwhile, in a modest chamber nestled within one of the city's forgotten quarters, the maid clasped a worn photograph, her fingers trembling. The coarse fabric of her dress scraped against sun-calloused hands, an unforgiving contrast to the silk and gold of the palace. Her heart hammered against ribs that seemed too frail to contain such fierce desperation. A $300 million disaster loomed over her fragile existence. A debt inherited, a trust betrayed, threatening to consume everything she held dear. Their worlds crashed into each other when the sheikh's private emissaries uncovered whispers of her plight, an anomaly in their flawless empire. Intrigued by the force beyond, mere capital, the billionaire sheikh descended swiftly into the chaos, defying his usual detachment. Seconds stretched as he assessed the tangle of deceit and despair she was entangled in, his mind racing with calculations, both financial and emotional. Your crisis threatens more than just your future, he intoned, his voice a low rumble, broken only by the crackle of distant storms. She met his gaze, a whirlwind of suspicion and reluctant hope, revealing strength forged in the crucible of ruin. Why should I trust you when power has always been the weapon wielded against my kind? A brief silence filled the room, heavy as the desert night, before a faint, defiant smile brushed her lips. Because sometimes the strongest need saving. Just as the first tendrils of alliance began weaving between their fractured lives, the sheikh spotted it. A hidden ledger buried beneath false accounts, one that hinted at betrayal from the very pillars of his empire. The maid's crisis was no accident. It was a meticulously orchestrated strike, one that could dismantle not only her fragile world, but his reign of ice and fire. The weight of this revelation struck him like the desert gale. Salvation would mean not just rescuing a life, but confronting ghosts he never fought to face. And before the next secret of this vast empire unfolds, make sure you're part of our journey. Hundreds of destinies await, and you won't want to miss a single moment. Like if the billionaire sheikh's cold heart stirred yours. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what twist you think is coming next. Your passion for these stories fuels us all. Thank you for being here. The sheikh's footsteps faltered for a brief moment, the weight of the hidden ledger pressing upon him like a relentless desert storm. Outside the marble walls, the amber sun dipped lower, casting elongated shadows that whispered of secrets yet unveiled. In the stillness of the room, his steel-gray eyes narrowed, not with calculation alone, but with a rare flicker of unease. She stood before him, the maid whose fragile existence had become the epicenter of a peril far greater than any mere financial disaster. Her gaze met his, steady despite the tempest swirling between them. The thin fabric of her worn dress betrayed her, rustling softly. In the heavy air that hung dense with frankincense and unspoken fears. "Your world," he murmured, "is not just a casualty of empires. It is a thread woven into the fabric of my own." A trace of something unspoken trembled in his voice, a confession veiled by authority. She swallowed hard, the memories pressing against her ribs. The debt was not just numbers on a ledger. It was a legacy of betrayal by those trusted, a chain forged by silence and blood. Yet the glimmer of hope amid despair was palpable, the unexpected intrusion of the Sheikh into her life. A titan who should have been indifferent, now a reluctant savior. Why now? Her voice cracked, shadows of suspicion sharpening every word. Why should I believe your empire cares for a maid's ruin? He took a step closer, the distance between them charged with tension, electric and fragile. The silks of his robe whispered secrets of power, yet beneath the grandeur, a man wrestled with a storm unlike any he had faced. Because your plight exposes cracks in a fortress I once thought unbreakable, and because, for the first time in years, I am compelled by more than strategy. The maid's heart thundered, the unexpected softness in his tone, as foreign as the midnight wind in the desert dunes. A sudden sharp knock shattered the fragile intimacy. The Sheikh's gaze sharpened, and with a single glance, he dismissed the courtier at the door. "We have little time," he said, voice low and urgent. "This ledger is only the beginning. Those who seek to unravel me have begun their assault in the shadows." She nodded, instincts snapping into place despite fear's grip. Together, they slipped into a chamber where maps and documents lay scattered, like the detritus of a collapsing empire. The murmurs of the past echoed in the silence between them. The ledger's entries revealed names, the prince's closest allies, trusted advisors whose loyalty now stood in question. The magnitude of the betrayal settled over them like a suffocating shroud. Every balance sheet, every contract, every secret deal was a battlefield strewn with landmines. "How deep does this go?" she whispered, tracing the ink with trembling fingers, deeper than any of us imagined. His gaze was a storm, hidden pain melting behind the fortress of command. "My empire is threatened, not just by outsiders, but by kin." Her eyes widened. "And where do I fit into this? Am I merely a pawn caught in the crossfire?" "No," he said firmly. "You are the key to exposing the rot. The ledger bears your mark, evidence of your innocence, but also a threat to those who fear exposure." Her breath hitched. The harrowing truth was clear. Shadows long buried had chosen her as their battleground. The Sheikh's hand brushed against the heavy silk curtains as he turned toward the vast window. The city below, glowing like a bed of embers. "I built my empire on power, on control. But power without trust is a castle built on sand. And yet you trust me? She asked, disbelief mingling with a fragile hope. He turned slowly, the desert's dying light catching the cold glint of his eyes. Trust is a luxury I can no longer afford. But necessity breeds alliances, even unexpected ones. A silence thickened between them, fragile as spun glass. With a sudden resolve, she stepped closer, courage igniting in her veins. "If this empire implodes," she said quietly, "it won't just destroy you or me. It will ruin countless lives we barely see." He studied her then. Silence, vulnerability, flickering beneath his imperious facade. "You speak as though you carry the weight of the entire desert." She smiled bitterly. "Maybe because I do." Their shadowed glance cracked the armor of their guarded exchanges, revealing hurts and hopes neither dared to voice. But even as alliance whispered between them, a shadow loomed inside. The palace, a figure lurking near the periphery of power. Eyes that never blinked, hands that moved unseen, and a smile that promised chaos. The Sheikh's jaw tightened. "We are not alone in this fight." Her breath caught. "Someone within my court," he confessed, "feeds poison into the veins of my kingdom. Someone who envies my throne and fears what you might become to me." Her pulse quickened. The stakes had escalated beyond rescue or ruin. It was a war for survival, not just of fortunes, but of souls. Outside, the desert wind rose, carrying with it the scent of impending storm. In that charged moment, the Sheikh stepped closer, his voice a low promise. "To save what we hold dear, we must unearth every secret, confront every ghost. Will you stand with me?" Her eyes blazed with defiance and an unyielding flame no betrayal could extinguish. "Until the last grain of sand falls." As the palace clock told midnight, the fragile alliance solidified. Yet behind the ornate doors, a hidden chamber whispered dark truths. The maid's fingers trembled once more, this time holding a second, smaller ledger, its pages stained with ink and blood. And from the shadows, a voice, cold, familiar, and deadly, breathed a chilling warning. "They know too much. It's time to bury the past for good." The heavy silk of the curtains stirred as the Sheikh's fingers brushed the fabric, his gaze fixed on the glowing city beneath the twilight sky. The palace, a fortress of glimmering gold and cold marble, seemed to hold its breath. With him, the scent of frankincense thick in the air between them. She met his eyes, unwavering despite the weight of the ledger's truth. The fragile thread that linked their fates now stretched taut, threatening to snap under pressure no one could have anticipated. "Why this ledger?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper, heavy with disbelief. "Why involve me in this web of betrayal?" His steel-gray eyes darkened with a storm of unspoken regrets. "Because you are the unexpected variable, the one they underestimated. And because I cannot dismantle this conspiracy without someone who remembers the truth without fear." Her heartbeat quickened. To be seen, truly seen, by a man who ruled with an iron fist. It was terrifying and electrifying all at once. The air between them thickened with an unspoken challenge. Neither could ignore the dangerous game they were now entangled in. A sudden soft chime echoed from a distant chamber, slicing through the silence like a blade. The sheikh turned sharply toward the sound, his jaw clenched. "They've begun moving. The rot spreads faster than I anticipated." She followed him, her steps steady, despite the rising storm inside. In a room dimly lit by flickering candlelight, maps sprawled across a dark wood table like a battlefield awaiting conquest. Threads and pins marked places she could only guess at, but his hands swept over the surface as if tracing invisible wounds. "My advisors," he hissed, voice thick with venom. "Trusted men, loyal in appearance, but thirsty for my throne." Her eyes narrowed. "And yet, you trust me." "Trust is a currency I can no longer spend freely," he said evenly. "But alliance is necessary. Without it, both of us fall." The silence grew between them, heavy and intimate. His gaze softened just a fraction, as if the fortress around his heart had momentarily cracked. "You are nothing like I imagined," she confessed, voice almost breaking. "Behind this empire of power and gold, I see a man guarding a fragile soul." He turned away, out the window to the desert's stretching horizon, where shadows lengthened like fingers reaching for the night. "I was built to be unbreakable, and yet here you stand, an unexpected force, threatening to dismantle the armor I've so carefully crafted." A tremor passed over her lips, a mix of fear and something darker, anticipation. Before the moment could deepen, hurried footsteps approached down the marble hallway. The door creaked open, revealing a messenger whose eyes flickered with urgency. "The situation worsens," the man said breathlessly. "The prince's enemies have mobilized supporters inside the council. A vote of no confidence has been scheduled, less than 24 hours from now." The sheikh's glare was ice forged in fire. "They move boldly, blind to the true consequences." She stepped forward, conviction blazing in her chest. "Then we must expose them before the vote, before they shatter what little trust remains in this kingdom." He studied her for a long moment, weighing the storm of betrayal against the fragile alliance between them. "Your courage defies reason," he murmured. "Yet it might be the only weapon we have left." The scent of sandalwood and desert winds filled the heavy air as they leaned closer. Two titans poised on the brink of war and an unspoken, dangerous attraction. Suddenly, a faint rustling drew their attention to the heavy curtains. The maid's second ledger lay on the floor, the edges tattered and ink-stained. She bent to retrieve it, fingers trembling with the weight of what it might reveal. Her breath caught as she flipped through the pages. Records of secret meetings, coded messages, betrayal woven into the very fabric of the empire. From the darkest corner of the room came a faint, chilling whisper, slicing the thick silence like a knife. "They know too much. It's time to erase every trace." The sheikh's eyes snapped toward the shadowed doorway, muscles coiling as if ready to spring. A slow, menacing smile crept across a hidden figure's face in the gloom. "And what we bury today," the voice hissed, "will echo in blood tomorrow." A tremor of dread coiled in the depths of the Sheikh's heart. He stared at the maid, the ember of defiance burning fiercer now in both their souls. If they wished to survive, the stakes would have to rise, far beyond betrayal and ledgers. For in the shadows of his empire, a war had already begun, a war that would demand sacrifice, trust, and a love tested by fire. And as the desert wind howled outside, carrying the promise of a storm yet to come, the Sheikh whispered to himself, voice a razor's edge of resolve, "Let them come, we will not fall silently." The heavy curtains billowed slightly as the faint gust of desert wind slipped through a barely cracked window. The room, thick with the scent of sandalwood and lingering frankincense, seemed suspended in a fragile balance between looming chaos and tentative alliance. The billionaire Sheikh's gaze remained fixed on the sprawling city below, where golden lights flickered like distant stars beneath the violet dusk sky. He turned slowly, eyes darkening under the weight of the secrets they had just uncovered. "This ledger is not just a repository of numbers," he murmured, his voice low and measured, but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut through marble. "It is a map of betrayal, a betrayal that runs deeper than veins of gold in this land." The maid's pulse quickened. The fragile hope that had begun to kindle between them teetered precariously under the shadow of his revelation. "So the conspiracy, it is not just against me?" she whispered, her voice fragile yet defiant. "But against your entire reign?" A slow nod confirmed what she already feared. He stepped closer, the distance between them charged with unspoken truths and an electric tension that neither dared to dispel. His tailored robes whispered in the dim light, hiding the turmoil beneath his composed exterior. "They have infiltrated my council," he said, teeth clenched. "Men I trusted like brothers. Men whose loyalty was as much a facade as your predicament was designed to be." He squeezed his eyes shut briefly, the storm behind them momentarily making him human. "If this reaches the public, it will shatter the empire I have spent a lifetime building." Her hands clenched at her sides, knuckles white against the worn fabric of her dress. "Then exposing them is no longer just about clearing my name," she insisted. "It's about survival, yours and mine." A faint smile, barely a twitch of the lips, softened the harsh edges of his countenance. "Perhaps it is." He reached out hesitantly, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face with surprising gentleness. The unexpected tenderness shattered the fragile walls that had shielded them both. "Tell me everything you know," he commanded softly, voice now threaded with urgency. "Every whispered secret, every hidden alliance. We need every fragment if we are to dismantle this poison." She nodded, summoning the courage to meet his gaze squarely. "There are names in the ledger, call signs for covert meetings, coded contracts hidden behind legitimate business dealings. Some even tie back to trusted foreign allies." His brows knit tightly. "Enemies within and without." A sudden sharp knock at the door jolted them apart, as both instincts screamed caution. The Sheikh's eyes darkened immediately, flashing with the keen awareness of the predator he was. "Enter!" A young courier slipped in, face flushed with urgency. "My Sheikh, the council convenes tomorrow at dawn. Already whispers of rebellion echo through the halls, and your closest confidant has vanished without a trace." The sheikh's fist slammed against the marble table, the sound ringing like thunder in the hollow chamber. Vanished, or disappeared. The maid bit her lip, the walls closing in as every breath grew heavier with dread. Then time is the only enemy now. We must strike before the council turns your empire to ash. He paced the length of the room, silent thoughts racing like desert storms. The flickering candlelight cast his elongated shadow on the intricately woven rugs, a lonely sentinel standing guard over a fragile kingdom. Stopping beside her, he lowered his voice. Your presence in this has become dangerous, yet I cannot risk losing the truth you carry. His face softened momentarily, an almost imperceptible vulnerability bleeding through. Do you understand what this means? To stand with me is to place yourself in the crossfire. Her answer was steady, fire igniting in her eyes. Then I stand not only for myself, but for every innocent caught in this web. The silence that followed was not empty, but filled with the weight of unspoken promises and brewing storms. Outside, the desert night deepened, stars glittering coldly like the eyes of unseen watchers. A faint rustling near the entrance pulled their attention. The maid's second ledger lay half-hidden beneath the edge of a gilded console. She bent to pick it up, fingers trembling as she flipped through pages stained with time and secrets. Suddenly, a cold voice sliced through the shadows, low and poisonous. They know too much, too dangerous to remain alive. The sheikh's body tensed, every muscle coiling like a spring ready to snap. His gaze darted toward the darkness, where a slender figure cloaked in midnight waited, lips curling into a cruel smile that promised ruin. Who are you? The maid demanded, stepping forward despite the chill clutching her heart. The shadow laughed, a sound like breaking glass. A guardian of fate, or a harbinger of oblivion. Before she could react, the figure slipped deeper into the darkness, disappearing like a ghost swallowed by the night. The sheikh's eyes burned with a fierce resolve, the weight of crown and duty settling heavier than ever. This war has begun, he whispered hoarsely, and no ledger, no secret will be safe. He closed the distance between them, voice a harsh whisper. Prepare yourself. We fight not just for power, but for the survival of what we cherish. Her breath caught as he reached out, fingers brushing hers fleetingly, a touch electric with promise. In peril. The winds outside howled louder, carrying with them the impending tempest of betrayal, vengeance, and a love forged in fire. And as the night swallowed their whispered vows, an ancient enemy moved silently within the palace walls, ready to strike when shadows fell darkest. The air inside the dimly lit chamber hung heavy with impending doom. The flicker of candlelight cast restless shadows across the silk-draped walls, competing with the weight of secrets that had just surfaced. The Billionaire Sheikh stood motionless by the towering window, the sprawling city below a tapestry of golden dusk, its beauty deceiving in the face of treachery. His steel-gray eyes bore into the horizon, but inside, a tempest raged far more volatile than the desert winds. The ledger he held had cracked open a world he thought untouchable, revealing fractures born from deceit, betrayal, and ambition. The empire he had built, with iron will and ruthless precision, was dissolving into a chessboard where every piece could be his undoing. Behind him, the maid's breath caught, eyes scanning every fold in his regal robes, searching for the man beneath the impenetrable facade. Despite the silk and gold that cloaked his form, here stood a man burdened, entangled in shadows where trust was both weapon and weakness. "You must understand," his voice broke the silence, low and resolute. "This is not merely about survival. It is a reckoning. Within these walls, I no longer know friend from foe." She met his gaze, unyielding. "Then we fight in darkness, with swords unseen." The flick of her wrist produced a slender envelope, creased with urgency. "This arrived moments ago," she murmured. "A confession hidden beneath layers of silence. The last link in this chain of betrayal." The sheikh reached out, fingers trembling, an unusual crack in his otherwise steadfast demeanor. The envelope bore the emblem of the royal council, but the seal was broken. Inside lay a letter, inked with venomous truths. Names, dates, conspiracies meticulously woven into the empire's heart. And worst of all, a declaration, an ultimatum delivered in shadows. He crushed the letter in his palm, eyes blazing. "They believe this will break me, that this revelation will unravel the loyalty my people hold." "But," she whispered, stepping closer, "sometimes only the truth can forge strength." Their proximity lighted a fragile spark, a moment where the cold walls between them nearly melted. The scent of frankincense mingled with the faintest hint of jasmine from her hair, drawing him back from the precipice of crushing despair. For the first time in years, he hesitated. "What will you risk for this truth?" His voice was a rough caress, raw with emotion, hidden beneath layers of duty. She swallowed the rush of vulnerability flooding her chest and met his challenge with unwavering fire. "Everything. Because no empire can rise if built on a foundation of lies." Outside, the desert wind whispered through the palace corridors, as if the dunes themselves conspired with fate. The distant call of a lone falcon seemed a solemn herald for the tempest rising within these gilded halls. Suddenly, the silence shattered. Soft, urgent tapping at the heavy door. The sheikh's sharp glare sliced through the dimness as a courtier appeared, eyes wide and breath ragged. "My sheikh," the man gasped, "the council convenes in less than 12 hours. The factions align. Traitors prepared to strike." He nodded once, terse and commanding. "Then our time to act is closing fast. Gather our loyalists. We will meet under the veil of night." She watched the power behind his words, the commanding presence that could topple mountains and mend kingdoms alike. Yet beneath that iron will was a man grappling with a fragile alliance, a stranger turned unexpected companion. The sheikh turned back to her, gaze fierce, yet laced with an unspoken plea. "Will you walk this path with me, where shadows threaten to consume? All your resolve will be my shield." Her breath caught, heart pounding against the cage of ribs as she stepped forward, hand brushing his sleeve, an electric touch that ignited both hope and fear. "Until the last star fades," she vowed, "until every secret is laid bare." In that quiet confession, the walls themselves seemed to hold their breath. But the palace, resplendent in gold and marble, hides many secrets in its bowels. From the shadows emerged a figure unnoticed by all but the keenest eyes. Cloaked deliberately in midnight fabrics, the silhouette moved with lethal grace, an unseen puppeteer pulling threads toward destruction. His voice, a razor's whisper, sliced through the stillness from a nearby alcove. They grow bold, unafraid of the pyre they ignite. They will burn what is sacred. If left unchallenged, neither of the two noticed the faintest echo of footsteps retreating into the labyrinthine halls. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, hands trembling for an instant before the fury of control slammed down, reclaiming him. He closed the distance between them, fingers closing around hers in a grip both possessive and protective. "In this war," he said quietly, voice a promise edged with steel, "love and betrayal are weapons alike. We must be sharper than both." She nodded, eyes shimmering with tears not of sorrow, but of fierce determination. Suddenly, a faint rustle stirred the heavy curtains. She bent to retrieve the second ledger, still clutched tightly in her other hand, the one stained with ink and secrets darker than the desert night. Their shared glance was broken by the chilling exhale of a voice lurking just beyond the candlelight. "Some debts demand blood. Some secrets demand silence." The air snapped cold as the candle flame flickered precariously. He drew her close, whispering, "Tonight the empire will bleed, but we will not fall." Outside, the desert wind rose, a haunting hymn to the battles yet to come. And deep within the palace's labyrinth, a hidden chamber door creaked open. A hand reached out to release a small, sharpened dagger engraved with an ancient emblem, the seal of a king long gone, now resurrected for vengeance. The final words hung in the air, a silent decree to fate itself. "The end of the game has begun." The night thickened with tension as the wind whispered its ancient secrets through the carved lattice. Windows. The billionaire sheikh stood motionless, framed against the vast expanse of his kingdom, bathed in moonlight. Each shimmer of gold and marble masking the fragile empire beneath. His eyes traced the distant horizon, as if searching for answers buried among endless dunes. Yet the true battle was far closer, nestled deep within these walls. She remained near, her breath steady, despite the turmoil swirling in her chest. The weight of the second ledger, the stained pages heavy in her hand, felt like a cross to bear. Every whisper she had unlocked in those cryptic records threatened to collapse not only her life, but tore into the very heart of the Sheikh's shattered trust. A fragile silence stretched between them, thick with things unspoken. Then, as if propelled by some invisible force, the Sheikh's voice cut through the stillness, low and relentless. "There is a poison crawling through my court, hidden by smiles and false honor. These men wear loyalty like a mask, but beneath," his hand clenched into a fist, veins taut beneath the silk of his robe, "they betray everything this empire stands for." She met his gaze unflinching. "You speak of ghosts that walk in daylight, men who will not hesitate to extinguish us both to claim what they crave. A bitter smile ghosted across his lips. You have studied the game more closely than any. I underestimated how deep the venom runs. The flame of defiance in her eyes ignited something fierce inside him, an ember long buried beneath decades of hardened rule. Your courage lights a fire I never thought to ignite, he confessed quietly, and maybe, just maybe, it could burn the rot away. He closed the scant distance between them, his presence overwhelming, yet strangely vulnerable. His fingers brushed lightly against her wrist, a silk thread binding two worlds that should never touch. The touch was brief, electric. Tell me every secret you hold, every shadow cast by those who smile in daylight and betray in darkness. I will hear you. She swallowed, the words lodged behind ribs, scarred by years of silence. Slowly, deliberately, she began to unfold the tangled web. Names whispered at midnight, meetings cloaked in lies, deals struck in silence, fortunes built on falsehoods. Her voice grew stronger with each revelation, the fragile armor of her fear cracking under the weight of truth. The Sheikh listened, a storm raging behind his eyes, each piece of the puzzle unraveling the image of the empire he thought impregnable. Suddenly, a sound shattered the moment, a soft, urgent knock. The door creaked open on whispering hinges, revealing a young envoy whose face was lit by desperation. "My Sheikh," the man panted. "Loyalists loyal only in name already gather. The vote is called. Dawn will mark the empire's reckoning. Your closest ally has fled without word." The Sheikh's gaze snapped sharp. Fled or silenced? His fist hammered softly against the marble, a muted thunder that echoed the creeping dread seeping into every corner of the palace. She stepped forward, her voice steady yet fierce. "Then we strike before the dawn, or the empire falls in darkness." A brief nod from the Sheikh was an unspoken vow. "We have little time. I will summon those still true to me." The air shifted, thick with the scent of jasmine and desert sand carried on the cool night breeze. It was a scent once soothing, but now fraught with the promise of battles to come. As they turned toward the sprawling map sprawled on a table carved with ancestral patterns, their shadows stretched long and intertwined, a fragile alliance forged in necessity and unspoken yearning. But danger had not yet finished weaving its threads. From the darkness near the door, a keen-eyed watcher melted back into the shadows, a smile curling like smoke across lips steeped in malice. The cold voice slipped into the room, carrying a promise darker than the night. They grow bold, too bold for their own good. But the night belongs to those who know how to strike unseen. The Sheikh's gaze hardened, muscles coiling with the memory of every battle fought in silence. He turned back to her, his voice low, edged with steel and something deeper, a plea not often uttered. "In this war, there is no room for doubt. Our enemies think to crush us by severing trust. We must be the storm that uproots their poison." Her fingers brushed his again, a friction that sparked through the quiet tension. "Then we burn the shadows away," she vowed, "even if it consumes us." The night outside roared suddenly, the desert wind rising into a primal howl, a herald for the chaos yet to come. And beneath the palace's gleaming floors, Behind walls designed to contain centuries of power, a hidden chamber creaked open. A secret hand retrieved an ancient dagger, its blade etched with symbols long forgotten, but saturated with vengeance. The whisper that followed was a dark covenant. The game ends tonight, and only blood will seal its fate. The palace seemed to hold its breath, the heavy curtain still stirring from the desert winds whispered warning. The Billionaire Sheikh stood rigid, the glowing cityscape sprawling below like a sea of liquid gold. Yet all that brilliance was a fragile facade. His gaze caught the faint gleam of the ancient dagger etched with the forgotten king's emblem, a chilling reminder that the game was no longer one of numbers or secrets, but of blood and survival. The maid's breath hitched as she clutched both ledgers, their ink-stained pages heavy with dangerous truths. The flickering candlelight painted shadows across her pale face, highlighting the fierce determination burning in her eyes. She was no longer the fragile woman who trembled at the palace gates. She had become a reluctant warrior at his side, the unexpected key to exposing an empire's rot. His steel-gray eyes softened for a fleeting moment as he turned toward her. "We stare into the abyss tonight," he murmured, voice lined with both command and vulnerability. "And only together can we withstand the darkness waiting to swallow us whole." She swallowed hard, the weight of those words settling deep into her bones. "Tell me, how far does their poison reach? How many betrayals lie hidden beneath the marble and gold?" The Sheikh's jaw clenched, the tension radiating from his broad shoulders like a desert storm ready to break. "Further than even I dared imagine. Allies I called brothers now whisper rebellion. Men who feast under my roof plot my fall with the same hand that signs my decrees." A bitter laugh escaped her lips, low and grim. "Those who wear loyalty like a mask are often the deadliest." He nodded slowly, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "The council is fractured, each splintered shard aiming to claim the throne once my ruin is sealed. Their ambition blinds them to the wreckage they will leave behind." Their eyes locked, hers fierce with defiance, his flickering with the burden of command and resolve forged in countless battles. The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken promises and the fragile thread of alliance. Suddenly, a soft echo rapped against the door, breaking the spell. The Sheikh's command was immediate, sharp. "Enter!" A young envoy hurried in, his face pale and voice trembling under the weight of urgency. "My Sheikh, the factions have rallied their supporters within the council chambers. A vote of no confidence is scheduled for dawn. Worse, your closest confidant has vanished. No one knows where." The Sheikh's hand slammed against the marble pedestal, a muted thunder that filled the room with raw tension. "Vanished or silenced," he corrected grimly. The maid stepped forward, voice steady but fierce. "We cannot wait. We must strike before the empire bleeds from within, before the throne crumbles beneath mistrust and deceit." He turned to the maps strewn across the table, each pin a crisis, each string a threat. His fingers traced the lines like scars on a battlefield. "We must unmask the traitors, expose them with proof so undeniable that even the blind will see." Her gaze met his with a spark of hope. "The ledgers hold the keys. Every name, every meeting, every secret transaction. He gave a shallow breath, the weight of the moment nearly crushing. Then we must act swiftly. An empire is only as strong as its foundation, and ours is cracking. A silence fell over them, thick with the scent of frankincense and sandalwood lingering in the still air. Yet beneath that quiet, the palace pulsed with unseen dangers, those who moved like shadows, whose smiles belied knives concealed beneath embroidered robes. The maid's fingers trembled slightly as she flipped through the worn pages again, the ink revealing acts of treachery so vast they threatened to consume even her hope. "They think this will break us," she said, voice trembling with controlled fury. "But they don't know the fire they've awakened." A slow, low chuckle broke the tension. Neither flinched as from the darkest corner of the chamber, a figure stepped forward, cloaked in midnight fabric. Eyes burning with cold malice, the stranger's smile was a razor. "They don't see the storm coming," the voice hissed, "but it will drown everything in flames." The Sheikh's gaze hardened, every muscle coiling like a tightly wound spring. "You seek to burn what I have built." The figure's smile widened, sharp as a blade. "I seek only to reclaim what was stolen. A kingdom reborn through chaos." The maid instinctively stepped beside the sheikh, shoulders squared, heart pounding fiercely against her ribs. "We will not let shadows redefine our fate." The stranger's eyes glittered with menace. "Fate is a game for those who dare to play, and tonight the board is set." With a swift, almost imperceptible motion, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving only a lingering chill in the air. The sheikh turned slowly toward the maid, eyes blazing with the fire of a man who bore the weight of generations on his shoulders. He reached out, fingers closing around hers in a grip that was both possessive and protective. "This war will ask everything of us," he whispered, voice rough with fierce resolve. "Every secret laid bare, every ally tested, and every scar worn like a badge of survival." She met his gaze without flinching, steel replacing fear. "I am ready. We face it all. Together." Outside, the desert wind surged in a primal howl, as though announcing the coming tempest that would tear through the palace walls and the hearts within. But as the night deepened and the city lights dimmed low, an ancient door beneath the palace creaked open once again. A slender hand closed around the hilt of a dagger, one etched with the emblem of vengeance and old kings. The final whisper, black as smoke, drifted into the midnight air. "The board is set, and the first sacrifice is about to be claimed." The dagger gleamed faintly under the pale moonlight, a cruel beacon in the encroaching darkness of the palace's vast corridors. The billionaire sheikh's grip tightened around the heavy silk of his robe as he stepped back from the window, his figure cast in stark relief against the sprawling city below. Each golden light, flickering in the distance, was a pulse in the heart of his empire. Yet now, those pulses beat uncertainly, shadows clawing at their edges. He turned slowly, the tension in his shoulders betraying the storm raging behind those steel-gray eyes. His gaze met the maid's, unwavering, despite the fragile alliance forged in whispered secrets and shared peril. She held the two ledgers pressed into her palms like sacred relics, ink-stained fragments of a conspiracy that threatened to unravel them both. A long silence hung between them, weighted with unspoken fears and guarded hopes. "This night," he began, voice low and gravelly with hard-won authority, "we stand on the edge of ruin or redemption. The veins of treachery run deeper than I dared imagine, closer to my throne than I ever wished." She stepped forward, the worn fabric of her dress rustling softly against the marble floor, her heart pounding fiercely beneath the fragile surface. "The names in these ledgers, they are not just enemies of your empire. They are ghosts from mine." His eyes darkened, flickering momentarily with a raw vulnerability seldom seen by even his closest confidants. "And now, those ghosts hunt both our shadows." The distant echo of footsteps pressed against the silence, like a warning. The palace, once a sanctuary of splendor and unyielding strength, now played host to a silent war, one fought not with swords or guns, but with lies, whispers, and deadly intent. "We have to move swiftly," the Sheikh declared, his commands laced with urgency, sharpened by years of battle. "The council meets at dawn. By then, the traitors will seek to finish their coup." Her gaze hardened, flames of defiance burning through the trace of fatigue in her eyes. "Then we strike before they can gather their strength, before the poison spreads beyond recall." He nodded, a flicker of reluctant admiration crossing his face. "You have grown so much more than I expected, far from the trembling maid who once clutched a faded photograph." She allowed herself a faint, bitter smile. Perhaps strength is born from the fire of desperation. The room seemed to close around them, the scent of frankincense mingling with the crisp desert air seeping through the cracked window. Outside, the night was alive with the restless howl of wind, weaving through ancient stone and gold. Suddenly, the faintest whisper curled through the shadows, a voice dripping with malice and dread. Both froze, their eyes darting toward the source. "They come for what you hold most dear. Secrets, blood, power," the voice hissed, elusive but chillingly close. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, muscles coiling with lethal readiness. "Show yourself." The darkness shifted, revealing no more than a silhouette, a shadow slipping like smoke between columns, disappearing before a clear form could emerge. "The game begins anew," the voice echoed, fading like a breath into the stone walls. "The first sacrifice has been chosen." The maid's fingers tightened around the ledgers, determination seeping like heat into her veins. "Whatever it takes," she whispered, "we will not falter." He stepped closer, the space between them charged with tension and a fragile, unspoken promise. His voice dipped low, thick with a mixture of command and something almost tender. "Prepare yourself. At dawn, everything changes. Loyalty will be tested, and only the fiercest will survive." Her eyes met his, shimmering with resolve and something unnameable, a bond wrought in fire and shadow. "As long as the desert sands fall, I stand with you," she vowed. A sudden, sharp rap echoed from the heavy wooden door. The Sheikh's gaze snapped to the threshold, fury and alertness igniting in their depths. The door creaked open, just wide enough to reveal a young courier, sweat gleaming on his brow. He whispered grave news, barely audible over the rushing blood in the room. "My Sheikh, The council's factions are no longer contained. Midnight finds them armed, not only with words, but with forces eager to strike. Your closest ally has vanished. The palace is no longer safe. The words struck the room like thunder. The Sheikh's eyes darkened to nearly opaque steel, the shadows swallowing any hint of mercy. "Then tonight," he murmured, voice a razor's edge, "we do not merely survive, we hunt." The maid's breath caught. Hunt? Even if it means walking through fire? He turned, his gaze searing through the gloom, the desert night mirroring his fierce resolve. "Even then, for what we fight for is beyond throne or crown. It is the soul of this empire, and of us." The flickering lights of the chamber danced as the candle wavered, the fragile illumination casting their silhouettes, long and intertwined, against velvet shadows. In their proximity, the tension curled tighter, the unknown yet to come pressing close. From the depths of the palace, far below where no light reached, a silent door groaned open once more. A hand, pale and steady, grasped a small vial filled with a dark, glistening liquid. Shadows twisted as figures cloaked in midnight moved unseen, ready to strike a deadly blow that could shatter all. Hope. The night whispered their names, the desert wind carrying the faint scent of impending ruin. And as the first edge of dawn threatened the horizon, the Sheikh's voice dropped to a harsh whisper meant only for her. "The price of loyalty is blood, and tonight one of us will pay it." The dawn poured a soft, golden light over the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace's marble floors. The night's storm of betrayal and danger had finally broken, leaving a quiet stillness filled with the fragile promise of new beginnings. Inside the grand chamber, the billionaire Sheikh stood with the maid beside him, his steel-gray eyes now tempered with relief and something tender, an acceptance tempered by everything they had survived together. The heavy ledgers lay closed on. The ornate wooden table, their secrets no longer a shackle, but a shield for the future they would build. The council's traitors had been exposed during the long night, thanks to the alliance forged in trust and unyielding courage. One by one, their masks had fallen, their webs of deceit unraveling under the weight of undeniable evidence. The empire was no longer fractured, but cleansed, a phoenix rising from the ashes of treachery. The Sheikh's voice, calm yet imbued with profound authority, cut softly through the quiet room. Justice does not come from revenge, but from the strength to forgive and rebuild. His gaze found the maid's, no longer a prisoner of circumstance, but an equal, a partner who had emerged from shadows to stand firmly in the light. Her breath caught, the first smile, a genuine, radiant curve of her lips, breaking the pall of pain that once clung to her. Together, we rebuilt more than just an empire. We rebuilt trust and ourselves. Outside, soft winds carried the scent of blooming desert jasmine through the open windows, mingling with the familiar fragrance of frankincense. The once tense air now breathed easy, as if the palace itself exhaled relief after holding its breath for far too long. In the great hall, the court gathered, a tapestry of faces once torn by suspicion and fear. Now their expressions glowed with cautious hope. The Sheikh's announcement of renewed unity and reform was met with unwavering support. His words arrived not as commands, but as a heartfelt vow to guard both the throne and those who called this land home. The Maid stepped forward, steady and dignified, no longer the trembling woman clutching faded photographs, but a symbol of resilience and grace. Her past, once a source of vulnerability, had transformed into a foundation upon which her strength now rested. The whispers of scandal were replaced by stories of bravery and loyalty, intertwining her fate irrevocably with the Sheikh's. Together, they declared that the empire would no longer be ruled by fear or secrecy, but by transparency and compassion. The court's applause echoed through the gilded chamber like the harmonious chorus of a future renewed. Later, beneath the palace's vast domed ceilings, the Sheikh and the Maid found a quiet garden. Here, surrounded by fragrant orange blossoms and golden roses, the sun now fully claimed the sky, bathing the oasis in warmth and light. Their hands intertwined, fingers fitting with a natural ease, born of shared trials and unwavering trust. The Maid's eyes shone with hope, reflecting the shimmering light of the blossoming desert. He lowered his gaze to meet hers, voice barely above a whisper, but holding the weight of promises eternal. All I sought was control, but what I found was something far greater. Love that conquers every shadow. Peace that heals every scar. She smiled softly, her heart swelling with a joy that was no longer fragile, but fierce and enduring. And I found a home not in gold or power, but in you. A gentle breeze stirred the petals around them, as if the desert itself rejoiced in their union. The sun climbed higher, its rays weaving golden threads through their clasped hands, binding their fates in a promise of forever. Far from the shadows that once threatened to engulf them, they stood, a testament to the strength born from vulnerability, the courage sparked by trust, and the beauty that blossoms when two souls overcome every tempest together. Their future stretched wide and bright, a landscape richer than any palace. Together, they would write the next chapter, one of love, forgiveness, and an empire transformed by hope. And as the city below awoke to a new day, so too did the Sheikh and the Maid, no longer bound by past betrayals, but freed by the power of redemption and the enduring warmth of love.